Reached part 8 in the series, The State of the United States Economy and Society. Part 8 is titled, Widening Gaps in Income. For a large percentage of working persons, income has stagnated or fallen in both nominal and real terms over the last 40 years. Wide is the gap between those at the top and bottom of the income ladder in the United States. The U.S. Census Bureau reported that in January 2024, the median U.S. household income was $77,283. What the blue lines tell us is that the purchasing power of this income in 2019 has not increased very much over what it was in 2000. In other words, $77,283 is required today to purchase what $42,988 would in 2000. This chart shows how income is distributed to households. What is somewhat striking given the years of almost steady inflation, just 1% of households have an annual income above $200,000. There are 127.4 million households in the United States, which means the number of households in this top group is just 127,000. Where one lives in the United States makes a significant difference. States with the largest cities and most populous metropolitan areas generally have higher median incomes, but they also tend to have much higher residential property costs. An article by Eric Levitz, printed in the December 2018 issue of New York Magazine, makes a point about just how bad the situation had become. He writes, in 1980, the average worker on the bottom half of America's income ladder earned about $16,000 a year in today's money. Over the ensuing 3.5 decades, the average national income in the United States grew by 61%. That rising tide lifted all boats so high that, by 2014, the average worker in the bottom 50% took home a whopping $16,000 a year. Today, it takes almost $790,000 to be in the top 1% of earners. In Connecticut, Massachusetts, and California, it takes over $1 million. This chart shows that despite almost continuous increases in labor productivity, hardly any of this increase has resulted in increases in worker compensation. One reason is declining union membership, raising a number of important questions on the reasons why fewer and fewer workers are unionized. As is often the case, the devil is in the details, and when the details are analyzed, there is controversy. An opinion article by Leonid Brzezinski, printed by Bloomberg in January of 2019, explains. Much of the current debate about inherited wealth in a number of Western countries is informed by the notion that most of today's top incomes are the product of passive returns on financial capital rather than labor. But in a new National Bureau of Economic Research working paper, 4 U.S. economists stipulate that much of that income actually comes from the returns on the aptitudes or human capital of the working rich. These returns are so great because large human capital is exceedingly rare. This perspective reveals one of the problems caused by the terminology of the economics discipline. Human beings have talents, skills, abilities, and knowledge. These are the characteristics that cause individuals to differ in their ability to labor efficiently as well as efficiently utilize tools, capital goods. There is no such thing as human capital. Are the people running huge corporations worth what they receive in compensation? What about the decisions made to use corporate cash to buy back shares of stock rather than to invest in real growth and innovation? A research project undertaken by several economists at the University of Chicago and published in January of 2019 by the U.S. Treasury Department raised a number of important issues regarding the income level of those holding executive positions in businesses and other organizations. One of the co-authors of this paper, Eric Zwick, explained the findings published in this paper at a program at the University of Chicago, as they pertain to firms owned and managed by one or a small number of key individuals. Most capitalists in the 21st century appear to resemble the working rich and not the coupon-clipping rentiers of Marx's era. Owners are not only actively involved, but are in some sense instrumental to the income-generating activity that is going on in these firms. But what about the firms governed by a large board of directors and managed by persons not promoted within the organization based on their direct contributions to the firm's success? Critics of corporate executive compensation point to the huge and growing disparity between those in the executive ranks and everyone else. The median compensation in 2024 for S&P 500 CEOs was $16.5 million for women and $15.6 million for men. In 2021, the average retirement balance for S&P 500 CEOs was $19.4 million. This comes from a report of the Institute for Policy Studies in 2023. Well, what does race and gender have to do with it? Let's take a look. In 2024, the median income for black households was $56,490, which is significantly lower than the median income of $84,630 for white households, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. This represents a 33.3% gap between black and white households. In the fourth quarter of 2024, the median weekly earnings for full-time women was $1,083, compared to $1,302 for men. Now let's take a look at formal education. What does formal education have to do with it? In 2024, there was an overall decline from 2023 in first-year enrollments, the highest drop experienced by state colleges and state universities where a higher percentage of students require financial assistance. Analysts believe several factors are involved in the decline in white student enrollment. The free application for federal student aid chaos, the attraction of the job market, and fear of taking on student debt. Early in 2024, Forbes reported that over the past 14 years, the percentage of adults in the U.S. between the ages of 25 to 64 with college degrees, certificates, or industry-recognized certifications has increased from 38.1% in 2009 to 54.3% in 2021, a gain of more than 16 percentage points. Among adults 25 to 34 years old, 56.3% have attained a quality post-high school credential, a 17.4 percentage point increase since 2009. Formal education definitely has a strong relationship between individual income and the incidence of unemployment. But remember, what is presented here is median income. At each level of formal education, half of all persons earn more and half earn less. And even where the educational attainment is the same for men and women, men still receive higher annual incomes. As this chart shows, race and ethnicity also play a role in determining the income of women when compared to other women. Now let's take a look at the widening gaps in asset ownership. As great is the difference in individual and household income between those at the top and those at the bottom, the difference is even more pronounced regarding the assets held by individuals and households. A paper written by UC Berkeley economics professor Gabriel Zucman, published in February of 2019 by the National Bureau of Economic Research, concludes that income inequality has again reached levels last seen in the years just before the Great Depression and the Great Recession of 2008. Professor Zucman writes, "Wealth inequality has increased dramatically since the 1980s, with a top 1% wealth share around 40% in 2016 versus 25 to 30% in the 1980s. The wealth share owned by the bottom 90% has collapsed in similar proportions." No surprises here. The share of net worth held by the top 1% continues to increase, while that held by the bottom 50% barely registers. In 2024, the 400 richest Americans had a combined net worth of $5.4 trillion. As of January 2025, Elon Musk is the richest American with a net worth of $428 billion. He is followed by Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison, and Mark Zuckerberg. David Stewart, founder of Worldwide Technology with an estimated net worth of $11.4 billion, is the richest African American. He is followed by Robert F. Smith, founder of Vista Equity Partners at $10.8 billion. Michael Jordan comes in at $3.5 billion, and Oprah Winfrey at $3 billion is next. Fifth on the list is Jay-Z at $2.5 billion, generated by music, streaming services, sports management, and entertainment. Here we see that as of 2022, the two measurements of net worth provide some insight into who has how much, but neither of these two measurements tell us anything about the actual distribution of wealth. A report issued in September of 2017 by the Institute for Policy Studies examined the extent to which wealth concentration is leading to deepening poverty among black households in the United States. Among the key findings, white households in the middle income quintile own nearly 8 times as much wealth as black middle income earners and 10 times that of their Latino counterparts. On average, only black and Latino households with an advanced degree have middle-class wealth or higher, while white households on average need only a high school diploma to attain that same level of wealth. The rate of home ownership for all racial and ethnic groups except for blacks has recovered to historic highs. A 2023 analysis by the National Association of Realtors concludes, black homeowners and renters are more cost-burdened than any other racial group. Less than 10% of black renters can afford to buy the typical home. Black homeowners spend more of their income to own their homes than all racial groups, with 30% being cost-burdened, defined as spending more than 30% of their income on housing. That's followed by Hispanic Americans, 28%, Asian Americans, 26%, and white Americans, 21%. This graph provides an easy way to see the disparity in household wealth based on race. For blacks and Hispanics, their main source of wealth is the equity they have in a residential property. And here, their rate of property ownership is considerably lower than white households. For Asian Americans, the level of net worth depends on a number of factors, especially how many generations ago one's ethnic group came to the United States and the level of education of those living. Another factor is the percentage of an Asian American group who remain undocumented. For most Americans, the most serious financial problems occur with retirement. A Bank of America study indicated that the average 401k balance in March of 2024 was just over $92,000. Around 30% of men and 22% of women have more than $100,000 in retirement savings. Today, only about 6.8% of older Americans receive income from sources in addition to Social Security benefits. A plurality of older Americans, 40.2%, only receive income from Social Security. This chart is from 2017, but is the most current breakdown I could find. And so, what's coming next? Moving on, we will next take a close look at how we own and manage nature.